morning, Kuhner country. Okay, my friends, this is not just a huge local story. Trust me, it's going to be all over the national news later today, going to tonight. Last night, this is a national, frankly, even an international story. So, last night, beginning at about 7 o'clock in the evening, pro-Hamas thugs, and I'm choosing my words very carefully. This is not pro-Palestinian supporters as the local media is trying to spin it. These were people waving pro-Hamas signs, chanting anti-Semitic slogans on the second anniversary of that heinous attack by Hamas on southern Israel from Gaza on October 7, 2023. And they held last night a celebration, a commemoration of that horrific terrorist attack, one of the most horrific, barbarous attacks in modern history. 1,200 Israelis, Jews slaughtered, many women raped, children literally murdered, dismembered, some of them baked alive. And these thugs took to the streets downtown Boston. They started at Boston Common, and then it spilled over into Tremont and Winter Street. For those of you that are listening from across the country, we're talking literally that is downtown, heart of Boston. And it got violent. It got extremely violent. And as I said on X last night, it is time to call in the National Guard. Where is Mayor Michelle Wu? Where is Governor Healy? This was beyond disgraceful, beyond shameful, beyond unacceptable. And so I want to give a big hat tip to people on social media who were ahead of this story before the corrupt local media and how they're desperately now trying to spin it. At 5:30, there were flyers put out. This is by socialist groups and student groups. So Harvard University students were involved. Some MIT students were involved. These are people who are pro-Hamas. They were telling everybody to wear the keffiyeh, the Palestinian shawl, which shows their solidarity with Hamas and with the terrorists in Gaza, which also covers their faces so they can remain anonymous. And they said they were going to take it to the streets in order to honor the martyrs, meaning the people of Hamas who killed 1,200 Jews on that fateful day and are there to show their support for the so-called resistance, which is, again, Hamas, during the last 2 years of this war that has been breaking out and ongoing in Gaza. They began to march. By the way, their flyers had police cruisers burning in the background. So they were clearly signaling to their supporters, we're not just going to block traffic. We're not just going to create mayhem and chaos. We're going to try to burn we're going to burn some cars, firebomb some cars. We're going to take it to the police. Initially, it was quite peaceful. It was very rowdy, but it was still remained relatively peaceful. But then at about 7:30, it got very ugly. Mobs of pro-Hamas thugs began to turn on the crowd around them, pedestrians. They blocked traffic on Tremont Street completely. That's the main artery in downtown Boston. Now a crisis set in. Emergency vehicles were unable to pass. Traffic began to back up. Ambulances now couldn't get through. In fact, there's social media footage of a poor woman who's trying to desperately get to the hospital. Her husband, I don't know exactly what happened, but her husband was sick. He's in the hospital. It's a very critical situation. She's out of her mind, beside herself, saying she can't get through because these Kefia pro-Palestinian, pro-Hamas activists have literally blocked traffic, chanting, "Death to the Jews, death to the Jews." Or many of them were chanting, "The Boston Police Department, the BPD, is the KKK. The BPD is the KKK," i.e. the Ku Klux Klan, saying that police in general are white supremacists. Others were chanting their famous genocidal slogan, "From the river to the sea, Palestine shall be free." And they completely blocked traffic. They then began to attack and accost innocent pedestrians. They went on to Winter Street. The panic, the chaos, the terror spread there. As the traffic backed up, as now ambulances had to be diverted, as people's lives were literally being put in jeopardy, the police had no choice but to move in. And when they moved in with their zip ties to start making arrests, that's when these pro-Hamas thugs then began to attack and assault police officers and police cruisers. They then pelted the cruisers with objects. They punched multiple officers in the face. They kicked others. One officer in particular was savagely beaten. Several of them had to be rushed to the hospital with broken bones. Luckily, no one sustained life-threatening injuries. In total, after this mayhem and bedlam, more cops were called in. By the way, throughout the entire time, the pro-Hamas thugs were releasing tear gas or smoke bombs, but in red. And that created a sense of even making it more ominous, more difficult for the police to do their jobs. And they were able then, some of them, to escape using these smoke bombs. All the while, 13 ended up being arrested. 8 men, 5 women. They have been arrested. They have not yet been booked. They will be officially booked and arraigned apparently today, this morning. The city is reeling. And what is most disturbing, it's not just now that police officers were sent to the hospital, that they completely blockaded traffic. God knows if people died on their way to the hospital in these ambulances, emergency vehicles couldn't get past. But what's even more disturbing is that the mayor of Boston was incognito. The mayor of Boston, Michelle Wu, Marxist Michelle, was nowhere to be seen, was nowhere to be found. The governor, Holden Healy, nowhere to be seen, nowhere to be found. These Hamas thugs used pepper spray on the police, used objects, sticks, batons, rocks, glass bottles. Parts of downtown Boston resembled a war zone. Now, let me just make a couple of comments, and then I want to open it up to you, the great audience of Kuhner Country. 617-266-6868. Now, it's slightly different because these were pro-Palestinian Hamas activists and agitators, not Antifa, as you see in Chicago and in Portland. But basically, they're all part of the same far-left, radical-left alliance. Boston now is following in the footsteps of Chicago and Portland. They now, the radical left in this city has now been activated. Yet they're using the second anniversary of October 7 as the excuse to do it. Days of Rage is what they're now calling it. They say there's going to be even more violent protests tonight, more violent protests tomorrow, and they're vowing that it'd be even more bloody and greater numbers, more destructive than yesterday. This is clearly also a war on police. I don't believe this is coincidental, that if you look at their flyers on social media, they were calling for cop cars to be burned. They were calling for police officers to be attacked. This comes on the heels of what happened over the weekend in Boston, where a large crowd, mostly young people, college students, same pool. I wouldn't be surprised if it was similar, the exact same people, firebombed a police cruiser, tried to firebomb another police cruiser, and where police officers, again, were pepper sprayed, attacked, assaulted, and objects thrown at them. In Randolph, same thing. A large crowd blocked traffic completely. And then police officers were attacked, police cruisers were assaulted, and one of them they tried to firebomb. There is a war on police. And what we now see in Boston is that these far left activists, these anti-Semitic Jew haters, 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, it's now Boston's turn. Absolutely disgraceful. It was despicable, shameful. I could go on and on. I don't know what word fits what happened last night. The media now is trying to spin it, excuse it, minimize it, try to somehow in their way justify it. It's bad. I'm telling you right now, to the whole country listening, Boston now is becoming slowly but surely as bad as Los Angeles, as bad as Chicago, as bad as Portland. And it's not just the crazy left-wing activists that now roam and control the streets and parts of the city and believe they can act with absolute impunity. You look at the homeless crisis in Boston. You look at the fact now that crime has become so rampant that, frankly, now most business owners, they don't even bother to call the police. They're just locking their doors and closing shop. You go through many parts of downtown Boston, it's like Portland or Chicago or whatever, other cities. They're boarded up. The business owners have said, I'm done. I don't want to put up with this. Carjackings are way up. Break-ins way up. You now have shootings, murders, homicides in all parts of the city. In fact, ICE did a recent raid here in the greater Boston area. They arrested over 400 violent, criminal, illegal aliens. 400 who were just walking the streets. I'm talking, these are gangbangers, drug dealers, sex traffickers, some of them literally convicted murderers. So ICE has to do the job that Michelle Wu, that Marxist mayor, and Holden Healy, that pro-transgender crazed leftist in the governor's office. So you've got these two lunatic leftists who are literally running the city and the state into the ground. And again, last night, the images are shocking. Pro-Palestinian activists, many of them college students or tied to colleges, also tied, by the way, to far-left socialist groups. Some of them were involved with Antifa. So there's kind of a mixture or an alliance of the two. The far pro-Palestine anti-Semitic left and the Antifa pro-communist left, the sort of red-green alliance. Well, it came together last night. They were itching for violence. They were itching for a fight with the police. They were itching to block traffic and cause massive chaos and disruption. And by God, they got it. Now, I want to stress this. The police did a phenomenal job. You know how much I love the men and women in blue. But the police were not the aggressors. The police were, if anything, too timid, too cautious, too respectful of these thugs. You see them walking down the streets of Boston with weapons in their hands and wrapped in the keffiyeh. And by the way, this is happening now, not just in Boston, but in city after city. Since when do people have the right to completely block traffic? Like, the moment they start to block traffic, That's an unlawful assembly. It's illegal. It's an illegal gathering. You don't have the right to control the streets. We pay for these streets, not these thugs. The right to protest or whatever doesn't mean you get the right to shut traffic down. Never. First of all, it's disorderly conduct. That's number one. Number two, hey, the taxpayers, we pay for those streets. We have to get to work. We have to get from work. We have to get places. We have things to do. We have a life, unlike these people. And so in downtown Boston, the traffic just went back and back and back and back. And people are just sitting in their cars. But the most dangerous thing of all, emergency vehicles could not pass. You had ambulances who were trying to get to local hospitals, and they're frozen. They're stuck in traffic. They're putting people's lives literally in jeopardy. And then this mob turned on the police. They turned on the police. They began to punch police officers, assault police officers. Many of them surrounded police officers and then began to 3, 4, 5 of them at a time kick, stomp, punch them, pepper spray them. They detonated numerous smoke bombs. And then the police had to call in many, many more reinforcements. Or else this thing, it would have been bedlam. God knows what would have happened. All the while, these pro-Hamas terrorists, that to me, that's what they are. These pro-Hamas thugs are chanting, globalize the intifada. Globalize the intifada. Who are we? We're Hamas. Who are we? We're Hamas. Hamas is an international terrorist organization. It's not just the United States that's designated them as a terrorist group. Europe has designated them as a terrorist group. Most countries in the Middle East have designated them as a terrorist group. And yet, by the hundreds, they're able to now roam the streets of Boston like last night and start destroying property and menacing and disrupting public order and send police officers, attack them and send them to the hospital. And our mayor is MIA. Our governor is MIA. 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, yesterday was the 2-year anniversary of October 7. There were many, many very disturbing, frankly sickening pro-Hamas protests and demonstrations. In fact, there were celebrations across the United States, in New York, for example, here in Boston, which led to what happened last night, but also in London, in Edinburgh, in Glasgow, in Scotland, across Europe, across the Middle East, even in Gaza. Hamas was celebrating the mass murder, the horrific, the orgies of violence, and that they perpetrated on innocent Jewish Israeli civilians on October 7, 2023. Last night, hundreds of Hamas thugs dressed in keffiyehs, their faces wrapped in that Palestinian shawl, were celebrating Hamas, were celebrating the atrocities of 2 years ago, and they took to the streets of Boston. Now, I want to, and then obviously a massive clash with police, sending many of them to the hospital. 617-266-6868 is the number. You can text the Kuhner Man, 70470, 70470. This is from 703. Jeff, the question now that needs to be asked after last night's despicable behavior is who is funding these pro-Palestinian activists? Are these Boston people or have they been bussed in? Who organized it? And why no comment from Maura Healey or Michelle Wu? This is exactly what Trump is talking about and why we need more police protection, federalized or not. Bingo. Bingo. Okay, many of you are commenting on that poor woman. This is from 508, but I could give you so many. Jeff, It's all over Facebook. You have to see it. A poor woman is desperate to visit her sick husband who's been rushed to the hospital. She cannot get to see him. She is sitting in traffic, and right in front of her, police are being pelted, beaten, and pepper sprayed by young men wearing these shawls and waving Palestinian flags and chanting death to the Jews. Zip ties are being distributed by the police as they desperately try to make arrests. This is from, by the way, the Boston police. Finally, they had to storm in. They went in heavy, and they pushed back this pro-Palestine mob that first gathered on Boston Common. And we have it on tape. The police, the mob started by pepper spraying police officers. And after that is when they began their assaults. They started to attack police vehicles, some pedestrians in the crowd who were just shocked and horrified. They were also being attacked. And then it spilled over, and then they completely blockaded and blocked. Again, for those listening around the country, Tremont Street, Winter Street, those are the two main arteries of downtown Boston. You block those two, and you've basically shut the city down for the most part. It's very hard for, very hard for ambulances to get to hospitals, fire trucks to get to a fire. You block those two main arteries, those two main streets down, and you have shut down a good part of Boston. Okay, one more, and then I want to go to the phone lines, which, by the way, are jammed. 617-266-6868. This is from Larry Calderon, who is the head of the Boston Police Paternal Union, basically one of the key unions. Speaking on behalf of the Boston Police, 4 of them have been badly injured, several of them to the hospital with broken bones. Some of them got their faces smashed in. This is what he writes. Another night of violence against police in Boston. Our officers were attacked, assaulted, and sent to the hospital with injuries. Completely despicable and totally unacceptable. And it's now happening far too often with no repercussions. In other words, he's going as far, Larry is going as far as he can go, saying Michelle Wu is coddling these people, these thugs. Maura Healey is coddling these thugs. And the Democratic Party and the left in the city and in the state is coddling these thugs. The reason why this keeps happening is because there are no consequences. No one gets arrested, or if they get arrested, they get immediately released with a proverbial slap on the wrist. No one's going to jail over this. No one's facing a hard time. There's no serious punishment or serious consequences. And and I'm telling you, if this doesn't turn around and quick, we are going to be just like Chicago and just like Portland. I'm talking in a matter of months, if not a year. 617-266-6868. So I want to ask all of you, what do you make now of that mob, that pro-Hamas mob erupting yesterday in downtown Boston? Did the police act too late? And did they act with not sufficient force? And they vow to come back to the streets again tonight and again tomorrow. They want to bring the Intifada to the United States and to Boston. I say, keep the Intifada in Gaza. We don't need Hamas here. But that's me. I want to hear from you. Andrea in Weymouth. You're going to kick us off, Andrea. Thanks for holding and welcome.
Much, Jeff. Jeff, I've called you many times, and I've called you before on this issue because I'm Jewish. I've lived in Boston all of my life. I was born in Boston. I'm 72 years old. And what I have to say is different from what you have to say because I am Jewish. And I am telling you that there's a subtext to this. And the subtext is the same that Hitler used in Germany. Hitler said the economy's bad and it's because of the Jews. Here, the Jew haters here are going to say, if it weren't for the Jews, we wouldn't have our streets overrun by these thugs. Therefore, we need to get rid of the Jews. Now, the Anti-Defamation League recently conducted a survey in partnership with researchers from Columbia University. And I'm looking at the article right now, okay, from the Times of Israel. 55% of Jewish Americans, there's 5,000 people they interviewed, 55% reported at least one form of anti-Semitism in the past 12 months. 57% said that anti-Semitism has become a normal Jewish experience. Okay? People are, apparently 79% of Jews are concerned about it. 48% have taken actions to increase their personal safety. And there's a percentage that have worst case scenario, 33%, plans to leave the country. Okay? I'm sorry, that was 14% to leave the country. People are they're hiding the Judaism. People who are calling Ubers and who are ordering food out are using a different last name if their name sounds like a Jewish name. This is not just a Jewish problem. This is an American problem, and we need to take immediate action on this problem, okay? 18% of the 5,000 people interviewed, and I hate to throw out statistics, but it's the only way that I can do this. 18% were physically assaulted, threatened, or verbally harassed because they were Jewish. 36% witnessed an actual or threatened anti-Semitic violence. Nearly half said they faced exclusion or minimization of their Jewish identity. And I'm going to tell you, okay, I'm a very active older person. I have a hobby I'm very active in. Everybody knows that I'm Jewish. Everybody knows that I support Israel. And I swear to you, I'm being looked at differently. My husband will say, it's all in your head. I'm telling you, Jeff, it's not in my head.
Oh, it's not in your head. I can tell you right now it's not in your head. Look, I got to be careful how I say this, but look, I know a lot of leftists. I know a lot of liberals. They wear their anti-Semitism now on their sleeve. It's out in the open now. The hatred for the Jews, I have never, ever, I'm 56 years old. I have never seen anything like it in my life. 650, Rocky on the nose, 650 here on WRKO. Jeff Kuhner, Boston's bulldozer, 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, just very quick. I'm going to go back to the phone lines. This is a clip. It's been hard to get clips. The media really didn't want to cover what happened last night. So Sandy has been doing everything she can. Social media, people who listen to this show have been sending us some wonderful material. So I just want to paint to you a very quick picture. This is a pro-Palestine mob. These are pro-Hamas terrorists, really. They're thugs. They're dressed in that Palestinian shawl, covering their faces completely. Many of them are waving the Palestinian flag. You can see them holding sticks, batons. One guy looks like he's wielding an axe. It looks like some kind of an axe. Anyway, so they're wielding weapons. You can see some of them are holding pepper spray. They have completely blocked traffic. Traffic is at a complete standstill, and you could see it going back and back and back and back. The police now are trying to very calmly and politely, honestly, I think too politely, again, very professional. I'm not criticizing the police. I love the police, but almost too politely, too respectfully, trying to nudge them away. Like, come on, like, stop. You're blocking traffic. Please get to the sidewalk. Just please get to the sidewalk. And so with their hand motion, they're like, just please go back. Please go back because you're blocking traffic. You're becoming now a public menace. And they start viciously attacking police. You see them now pepper spraying police in the face. You can see officers right away, like their face is burning. Then they start throwing smoke bombs, which looks like tear gas, but smoke bombs, but it's a reddish color at the cops. And then you just see them now with the batons, the fists, the clubs. they just start smashing them and hitting them and hitting them and beating them. And the police then have to start responding. And it's bedlam. It's a riot. Literally, it's a riot. There's just no other way to describe it. And what's scary is, initially, this is still early on, you could see that the mob clearly outnumbers the police. Now, that wouldn't be, they called in reinforcements, and eventually they had enough police officers on the scene. But initially, you're like, now maybe that's why they were being, very gentle and, like very polite, and maybe they didn't want to antagonize them because they knew they were outmanned and outgunned and outnumbered. But whatever the reason, you're looking at this and you're like, holy, there's too many of them and there's not enough of you. Now, what they could have done, and they didn't want to do it, which is why some of them have been sent to the hospital with their faces smashed and their bones broken, is they could have pulled out a gun. But then you would have had a massacre. Then you would have had dead bodies on Tremont Street. So they showed exceptional restraint. And you can see the crowd sensed it. They saw the weakness and they attacked. So this is the first video. Roll cut 30, Mike. Now, and if about halfway through, you start hearing like, screeching. That's when the pro-Hamas thugs, these terrorists, began to assault and beat police officers, pepper spray them. But notice, even throughout, they keep beating their stupid drums. So many of them were just watching and like cheering it on, like celebrating it. Now, what they did, it was in theory, it was a pro-Hamas, clearly pro-Hamas. This was a pro-Hamas, pro-terrorist, anti-Semitic rally. There's no question. Okay, the place was crawling with Jew haters. But it also turned very quickly anti-police. In other words, they weren't just there to say, Israel should be wiped off the face of the earth. The only good Jew is a dead Jew, as they keep saying. Death to the Jews, death to Israel, from the river to the sea, Palestine shall be free. Who are we? We're Hamas. Who are we? We're Hamas. Stuff like this. But it quickly turned to the Boston Police Department. The BPD is the KKK. The BPD is the KKK. So it right away turned into which is Black Lives Matter and Antifa, that the police are inherently fascists, white supremacists, and KKK, basically neo-Nazi racists. And it's like, and the more they chanted that, the more violent the mob got. In other words, the more of them began to join in to these attacks on the police. Roll cut 30A, Mike. So BPD, KKK. I can't quite make out everything what they're saying, but you can clearly hear BPD, KKK. I think it's we're here to stay or something like that. Anyway, BPD, KKK. Now, these are left-wing student activists. I want to know who's funding them. I have a deep suspicion. I have a pretty good idea, but I want to know officially who's funding them. And I want to know, is Antifa involved? I think they are. Is Black Lives Matter involved? I think they are. And the bigger question is, why are Healy and Wu refusing to speak out? Why are they appeasing them? Why are they coddling them? Why have they said nothing? And then I've got to say two other things very quick. I'm sorry, but it needs to be said. To the Boston Police Department, and again, I'm not talking about the incredible rank and file. You know how much I love you guys, okay, and gals, our men and women in blue. I'm talking about the leadership and the heads of the unions. Not all. I love Larry Calderon. But the unions officially endorsed Michelle Wu. The leadership of the Boston Police officially endorsed Michelle Wu. Now, I'm sorry to the rank and file, but, ladies and gentlemen, guys and gals, with all due respect, Michelle Wu is your enemy. Maura Healey is your enemy. They're not defending you. They're with those on the streets. So what they're doing now is they are literally aiding and abetting. They are giving official cover, like in Portland, like in Chicago, and places around the country, where they're giving these radical anti-police activists, these cop haters, a license to target you, to send you to the hospital, to break your bones, to smash your faces, to potentially kill you and set your cars on fire. Now, thank the Lord, so far, no one has been killed. No police officer has been killed. But I'm telling you, if you keep firebombing cruisers as they've been, and you keep, smashing them in the face with clubs, someone's going to get killed. It's not a question of if, it's a question of when. Don't publicly endorse politicians who have put a target on your back. I'm sorry. In a way now, your leadership has betrayed you. I'm just calling it the way I see it. And now the question that we as a city have to face is, why won't our leadership stand up to these terrorists who are now rampaging on our streets? And if Michelle Wu won't do it, which she won't, and Healey won't do it, which she won't, I'm sorry, someone needs to give Donald Trump a call and say, now that you're sending the National Guard to Memphis, to LA, to Chicago, to Portland, send a couple hundred to downtown Boston. Because they're going to do it again tonight, and they're going to do it again tomorrow. And by the way, since when did Jew hatred and vile anti-Semitism become so fashionable now that the universities are openly supporting this, that the media is now coddling this, that the establishment, the Democratic Party, to the mayor, to the governor, refuse to condemn this anti-Semitic Jew hatred and this pro-vile terrorism that was on full display last night? Full display last night. They're celebrating Hamas, for God's sake. That was the 2-year anniversary of October 7, and they were chanting, "We stand with the martyrs. We stand with Hamas." And you're shocked? And by the way, when they say globalize the Intifada, remember I talked about what happened in Manchester in that synagogue, which was a big turning point because so many on the British left cheered the murder of 2 Jews that were killed. When they say globalize the Intifada, as Zoran Mamdani says, as Ayanna Pressley says, as AOC says, as Elizabeth Warren and Ed Markey say, when they say globalize the Intifada, as the Boston Globe says, this is what they mean. This is globalize the Intifada. You want that here in America? You want that on our streets? You want to bring the Middle East here? You want to bring these savages and their barbaric, evil, twisted culture that glorifies terrorism and mass murder and genocide? You want to bring that here? 617-266-6868. Agree, disagree. Larry in Arkansas. Thanks for holding, Larry, and welcome.
Jeff. Let's jump back in the Wayback Machine with Mr. Peabody. About a little over 100 years ago down south with Democrats when they would have bonfires and openly celebrate lynchings. How's this any different?
That's a very good point, Larry. It isn't. No, you're right. I mean, they openly celebrated it. They sang. I don't know if they beat drums, but yeah, they would sing, and it was like a festive occasion. It was like, hey, let's go watch them string up a black guy. Isn't this cool? And you're right. Now it's string up a Jew or string up a police officer. Larry, I want to ask you this, and you tell me if I may be overstating the case or exaggerating. I truly believe, in response to Andrea's call, because she says as a Jewish woman now she's afraid, and I don't blame her. If they saw on the streets last night, say on Tremont or Winter Street or whatever, and you know that area because you gave me security all the time when we would do our rallies, or walking around on Boston Common, if they saw a rabbi, if they saw, let's say, someone with a skull cap, a yarmulke, a Jewish man, if they saw a woman with a Star of David, a chain, a Star of David on their chest, I look at them and I'm like, they would have torn that person limb from limb. They would have, like a pack of animals. I think they would have, whoever, man or woman, if they noticed that person was Jewish, that they were so frenzied, so consumed and full of hate and rage and this kind of fanaticism that you can even sense it, even when you listen to them, that if they saw someone that was noticeably Jewish or identifiably Jewish in that mob, in that crowd, in that frenzy, I think they would have ran up to that person and just started, beating them, clubbing them. They even maybe would have even, beaten them to death. As I said, tear them limb from limb. Larry, am I wrong?
Well, Jeff, I can answer your question with a question. How many scenes did we see play out at BLM rallies, Antifa excursions, where the wrong person walked through at the wrong time and got their ass handed to them?
Oh, all the time?
We've seen it again and again.
Oh, again and again. You're dead on. No, you're dead on.
Yeah, it's not like, they've been peaceful. Then all of a sudden last night was just angry. It's been building for years, and they've been, I've seen them, that one elderly woman in Boston Common a few years ago, someone just, she had an American flag, I believe, and they just tackled her to the ground.
Larry, there's a video, we're not able to play it. It's complicated because of the sound, and it just wouldn't sound good. But we've seen it. Sandy's seen it. We've seen it. And this happened last night. So these are the Hamas thugs, the pro-Palestinian protesters. One of them is a woman. Now, she's covering part of her face in that scarf, that keffiyeh, but you can just tell by her, her anatomy, her body, her breasts, forgive me. You can tell she's got breasts, she's got long hair. And she just falls on the ground. They're walking quickly, they're protesting, and they're blocking traffic, and she falls on the ground. Oh, okay. She wasn't in a keffiyeh. My bad. Sorry, she was not. This one was not in a keffiyeh. She had pigtails and a backpack. So that she was not wearing a keffiyeh. But she was with the pro-Palestinian mob. And she falls on the ground. And the police are not there to arrest her. She falls on the ground, on the pavement, and you could tell the officers are like, oh, are you hurt? And so they go and they, grab her to lift her up, to make sure she's not hurt. Are you okay? And you can see them even saying, like, be careful. They say to her, please be careful. And then they ask her to just maybe move away where the pavement is not so rough. So they're actually there to help her, to console her, to make sure that that she doesn't hurt herself. And these animals in the crowd, and they're savages, start going berserk. I thought they were going to kill the officer. They surround the officer, yelling, shouting, screaming, pushing, shoving, Like, get your hands off her! Get your hands off her! Get your hands off her! You pig! You pig! You pig! And you're looking at this and you're like, oh my God, they're trying to help this poor woman in the midst of a riot. And you guys are so filled and consumed with hate that you want to wring their neck. You want to what? You want to kill them? You want to beat them? What do you want to do? Send them to the hospital because they're trying to help one of your own who fell on the ground? Larry, we got a problem, man. I'm telling you, we got a problem. And we got to find out who's organizing this, who's funding it, who's paying for it. And I'm sorry, but Pam Bondi has to get involved. The Attorney General, the feds have to, this cannot be handled internally. No, the media here is too corrupt, too compromised. You have the Democratic Party here, which is in bed with these radical leftists and these anti-Semites. You've got the mayor who's too corrupt. You've got the governor who's too corrupt. You need federal oversight. The feds need to come in and come in now, because I'm telling you, this is going to it's ugly and it's going to get much uglier. Final word to you, Larry. Am I wrong?
No, Jeff, you're not wrong. Two things. First, you asked a question at the very beginning. Where's Maura Healey? Where's Wu? I was telling Mike on the phone when I called in that picture Wu. Do you remember Tim Walz's wife, that idiot, saying that they had the windows open because they could smell the burning rubber and stuff? Yeah,
during the George Floyd riots as they were burning Minneapolis, and she said it was such it was a feeling of ecstasy because it was the smell of revolution. And so she said, keep the windows open, Tim. Keep the windows open so they could smell the burning of the homes and the buildings.
Glass of cognac, windows open, listening to the mayhem with a big grin on her face, because this is her and Healy's plan all along. But on the flip side of that, again, go back through all this history we've had in the last 10 years. How many instances of police interactions where someone outright lied and said the cops did this when they didn't do that? They made up stuff on the spot. Cities burned because cops were doing their jobs the right way, not police brutality, but they were stopping criminals. And somebody died because they're being stupid. Let's not couch it. And they go nuts. So it's, when that's fed into the hive mind for so many years, an act of kindness is looked at as evil because that's all they know. Oh, she hit the ground. He went over to pick her up. He must have knocked her down. Let's kill the cop. And the next question you have to ask yourself, sir, is where'd they learn this? Because this didn't come, this is not organic. This didn't come overnight. Again, we've talked about this before. Years and years and years of indoctrination. And I'm getting to a point where I'm starting to blame parents for not being responsible to know what their kids are learning in school, especially when they're paying tuition for their kids, and they're turning out these little Marxists. At some point, you got to take responsibility.
And, Larry, I agree with you. And just to add, I can only add, your points are, as always, dead on. Where did they learn to hate Jews like this? Really hate Jews. And I'm not talking about, I disagree with Israel or I'm sympathetic to the Palestinians or, I side with Israel, but that's neither here nor there. I'm talking about foaming at the mouth, kill every Jew, wipe them off the face of the earth. The only good Jew is a dead Jew. We're talking now about the kind of anti-Semitism that we saw in the 1930s. That kind of rabid, fanatical, bloodthirsty, extreme anti-Semitism. And that was last night. And that's on college campuses. That's that's prevalent on Antifa, the far left. It's Mamdani. 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, I promise I'm going to go right back to the blazing phone lines. But first, 7:20-ish Wednesday. You know what that means. truth or troll? Take it away, Mike.
And now, America's favorite game show, where you get to decide on the Kuhner Report. This is Truth or Troll.
All right, for today's Truth or Troll, it comes from Kamala Harris, who has been traveling the country on her book tour. When during one of the stops on her tour in San Francisco, she seems to have a poor memory in regards to her getting thumped by President Trump in the 2024 presidential election.
It was the tightest, closest presidential election in the 21st century. He does not have a mandate. That is not a mandate. That is not a mandate.
So now it's just not a mandate, apparently. So what do you think here? Is she telling the truth? Does she really believe that it wasn't a mandate and that it was close? Or is she just trying to troll everybody?
She's drunk. That's what I think. I think again, the drinky. That's what you want to know my honest opinion? If we had a C, A, truth, B, troll, C, she's drunk again. I'd go C, she's drunk again. First of all, Mike, what I find hilarious is Trump destroys her in the popular vote by millions. He gets, 312 electoral college votes. It's an electoral college landslide. He runs the table on her. He wins every single swing state. Every single one of them. And she's like, how is this close? Like, in what planet? Unless, again, drinky. Yeah, maybe after, 4 or 5 glasses of wine. Closest race of the 21st century. Okay, Kamala, have another. No, Mike, she's trolling. Boozed up, but let that go. Definitely trolling. On no planet was this a close election, and on no planet does Trump not have a mandate. But that's me. I want to hear from you, the great audience of Kuhner Country. You can vote on our webpage, wrko.com/Kuhner, wrko.com/Kuhner. Was this a truth? Does she really believe this? That her defeat in 2024 was, the closest defeat, one of the, the closest election race of, the 21st century? Or B, she's trolling, she's lying, maybe under the influence of alcohol, but let that go. Truth or troll, I'm a B on this all the way. But that's me. I want to hear from you. Again, you can vote at wrko.com/Kuhner, Kuhn as in National ER, or if you prefer, you can vote via X. And boy, I was on top of what was going on in downtown Boston last night. Right away telling Trump, please call in the National Guard. This is only going to get uglier. This is only going to get worse. But anyway, you can vote there as well. My handle, all one word, at the Kuhner Report, at the Kuhner Report, Kuhner. Heather in Rockland. Thanks for holding, Heather, and welcome.
Jeffrey, thank you for taking my call.
My pleasure, Heather.
So I have a little bit of a story. I must say, God must have been watching out for me last night. So I work in downtown Boston, right in the financial district, and I never go out after work anymore. I usually just go right home. But last night I met a girlfriend of mine that I haven't seen in a while. We met for dinner, and we went to the Faneuil Hall, and I walked over there from work, and I remember saying to myself every time I'm like, this is so sad to me. Like, I was saying to myself, I am so sad to see the way the city is. Like, it used to be bustling. Like, Faneuil Hall was dead. I mean, there was probably one other couple in the restaurant last night that we were at, and we were in Faneuil Hall. I mean, I remember after work, it used to be like booming, and it didn't matter what day of week it was. Like, there was like nobody like around really. And I just feel bad for like all these business owners and stuff. So fast forward, we're having dinner, and it's around 8:00, and she's like, and my friend lives in the North Shore, I live in the South Shore, and she says, "Oh, my boss comes at blah blah blah. How are you going to get home?" And I said, "Oh, I'm going to probably walk, to Park Street or even downtown." I said, "I hate going to Downtown Crossing, so I'll probably just walk to Park Street." And then I caught myself, and I'm like, wait a minute, Michelle, I can't walk. I got to go to Haymarket, which was like right next door, Haymarket, the train station right next door to where we were eating, basically. I said, I can't walk. I said, I don't know what I'm thinking. Like, back in the day, I'd think nothing of it. It was like around 8:30. I said, with all the craziness going on in the city, and the way the city is, I said, and then I go on my little high horse how much I hate the mayor and how much I hate the governor, and she's just rolling her eyes at me. And I said, I like, that would be stupid of me. And if I had walked to either Downtown Crossing, or probably I would have most likely walked to Park Street because I don't really like getting on at Downtown Crossing, and I would have walked through all of that. Like, I would have walked through all of that mess. If I had walked,
you would have been at best, you would have been sent to the hospital. I'm telling you right now, they would have beaten you. They would have beaten you black and blue. And you would have had broken bones, God knows, a broken jaw, who knows what they would have done to you. And at worst, you may have been killed. I'm just telling you that you're basically, by not that area last night, Boston Common, Tremont, Winter Street, that area that you avoided by the grace of God, that's Gaza. That's globalized the Intifada. They brought Gaza here. Roman in Boston. Thanks for holding, Roman, and welcome.
Good morning, Jeff. How are you? It's been a while.
Thank the Lord I wasn't on Tremont Street last night at about 8:00. That's all I can say, Roman.
Yeah, Jeff, you know what? These people, these people have so much vim and vigor to protest and riot and hurt cops and destroy property here because they know there's no ramifications. Why don't they do what their heart tells them to do and go to Gaza and fight against Israel? They would never do it. You know what I want to hear to talk about cops? I am a year and 3 months away from retiring. And 30 years ago, Jeff, this wouldn't have happened. It wouldn't have. It would have been stopped, nipped in the bud by any means possible, because this is absolutely disgusting. And you had said the patience the cops need now and the patience cops use and the restraint, for an old timer like me, that is like, it is horrible because there's this police officers standard training commission in Massachusetts. And ever since George Floyd, the police reform and all of that, you can't even use harsh language against people, because cops are worried about getting their pensions pulled. And it's amazing to me, this metamorphosis that happened. You know what I mean? Like, they're getting sprayed and red smoke bombs is definitely organized. There's no doubt about that. They all have gas. I mean, if you look in Portland and Chicago, they all have the same gas masks. It's all college student age white people and people reliving the 60s. White people that are doing this. It blows my mind that where's Wu? Like it's been said earlier by several people in you. Where's Wu? Where's Hilly? Mom. Everybody's quiet on it. The news won't report on it. Where do we go from here, Jeff? When do regular people, instead of, just idly standing by, when do we come out, or when do the people come out and start helping the cops? Because, it's getting to that point. You can't just let them run roughshod throughout and it's all happening in blue cities. It's not happening in, down south in blue cities. So, what do you think about all? What are your thoughts on all this?
Well, Roman, look, this is the only way I can read the evidence. What you're now seeing is a Marxist takeover, and I'm choosing my words now very carefully, of these blue cities and blue states. And Mamdani is going to be the bombshell that really detonates everything. But Michelle Wu is really already Mamdani. And Brandon Johnson in Chicago is another Mamdani. And the mayor of L.A., Karen Bass, is another Mamdani. So, but Mamdani, because it's New York, that's the media capital of the United States, that's the financial capital of the United States. So when you get someone as extreme, really, he's a communist, a Muslim communist, become the mayor of New York, that is going to send alarm bells ringing across the entire country. And what happened last night, let me tell you what happened last night. The media can try to spin it all they want as some little dust up, a little incident, nothing to see here, move on, because they have to keep up the fiction, the false narrative that Michelle Wu is propagating, peddling, that Boston is the safest city in the United States. Well, you look at last night, that's not the safest city. You ask the people in Dorchester or Mattapan or where there's shootings now and knifings and stabbings every day, that's not the safest city. You go through these homeless encampments or seeing people literally OD on the streets. I mean, this is disgusting. The carjackings, the burglaries, the break-ins, to the point now that you have businesses just closing up shop. And Andrea's completely right. Who goes out to dinner anymore in Boston after 7 o'clock at night? Nobody. Everybody knows it's not safe. But they have to keep up the fiction that this is the safest city in America. Now, what's really happening is, I'm telling you on social media, and people who listen to this show know exactly what's going on. And they're going to keep revolting from the Democratic Party. There is a big seismic change taking place in Massachusetts. The Democrats now are no longer the party with the most registered voters. It's independents. The biggest voting bloc now in Massachusetts, and it's not even close, are independents. Now, and they're not leaving the Republican Party because there wasn't much of a Republican Party to begin with. They're all leaving the Democratic Party. Now, they're not joining the Republican Party because it's run by idiots like Amy Carnevale and her allies in the media, these rhino, Judases, who are just in it to line their pockets. So they're controlled opposition. But once you get a serious Republican operation over there that wants to win elections, give a real alternative, stand on real principled policy issues that resonates with the needs of everyday people in Massachusetts, they will wipe the Democrats off the floor. But the fact of the matter is, independents are fleeing the Democratic Party. Now, what do you think is going to happen after last night? There's a very big Jewish community. I'm going to read to you a text after the next break. I want to read it to everybody. In Randolph and in Milton. Okay, very big, large Jewish community. To a man and a woman, they're like machine Democrat voters. Loyal, they pull that lever no matter what. If it's got a D beside a person's name, they vote for it right down the line. After what they saw last night, after what they're seeing on campuses, after what they're seeing who their party now is championing, and the attitudes of Michelle Wu and Maura Healey, you now have many, many, many liberal Jewish Americans who are, I'm just giving them as an example, who are finally waking up and saying, oh my God, what is my party doing? Who have they gotten in bed with? They've gotten in bed with fascist monsters, Jew-hating, anti-Semitic, Islamo-fascist monsters who literally chant on the streets about cutting our throats from ear to ear. And, there's anti-Semitic attacks now. I'm going to get to another story the media is desperately trying to bury. There's anti-Semitic attacks now taking place in Boston almost on a daily basis. So what I'm saying is ordinary people on the ground are doing two things. They're either becoming independents and fleeing the Democratic Party, or they're leaving the state and they're going to Florida or South Carolina or wherever. But the Democrats are bleeding supporters, they're bleeding taxpayers, and they're bleeding people. And eventually this is going to catch up to them. When you have that many independents who are leaving your party, your grip on power is getting less and less secure. So, Roman, what we need to do is continue to speak the truth and open people's eyes. Don't let the media get away with constantly pulling the wool over people's eyes. They're constantly being lied to. All you have to do is just show the images. Just show the images. This is what happened last night at the Boston Common. This is what they did on Tremont and Winter Street. This is how they attacked the police. This is what they were chanting. And the mayor will say nothing, and the governor will say nothing. 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, a rampaging pro-Hamas mob last night attacked police officers, sending some of them to the hospital with broken bones. They attacked police cruisers. They also attacked the pedestrians. They completely brought traffic to an absolute standstill. Tremont Street, Winter Street were blocked for hours. People couldn't get anywhere. Ambulances weren't able to get to hospitals. Fire trucks weren't able to get to places they needed to get to. You want to talk about utter mayhem, bedlam, public disorder, chaos, and now police unions are speaking out, saying that now there is a war on police being waged on almost a regular basis. Not just last night, on the weekend in Southie, in Randolph, police cars are now being firebombed. Police officers are being attacked. Police officers are being assaulted. And there is absolutely nothing coming from the mayor's office or from the governor's office. 617-266-6868. Just very, very quickly, I want to read this. There are many people in the Jewish community in Boston who listen to this show. And to those who are of the liberal persuasion, or you voted Democrat in the past, I look at you as the way I look at RFK Jr. or Tulsi Gabbard. I don't say what I'm about to say or read now as a taunt or as a way to, humiliate you or embarrass you or attack you. In fact, the opposite. I want to welcome you as my brothers and sisters, the way I welcomed RFK and Tulsi as my allies and my new friends. But this needs to be said. This is from 617. And I know this person who's texting into the show. You can text us, by the way, 70470. Jeff, as you know, the Randolph-Milton area has a very large Jewish community. And in fact, I have several friends among that community. All of them are Democrats. All of them vote straight Democrat all the time. Yet last night, they were not just saddened and horrified, but they were awakened. And it brings me no joy to say this to them, but I did tell them, you voted for this. You chose this by the candidates you selected. You brought this on yourself. Become an independent. Leave the Democratic Party. You don't want to join the Republican Party? That's fine. But for God's sake, leave that Jew-hating, pro-Hamas, anti-Semitic cesspool that has now become the Democratic Party. And be very careful of who you vote for in the future. Because what you saw, that was a pogrom. What you saw last night is a taste of what's to come if you continue to put these anti-Semitic, radical left Democrats in power. Now, let me just say one other quick thing. There is another incident involving anti-Semitism that this corrupt media, and I'm calling them all out, the Boston Globe, the Boston Herald, that rhino yellow rag, and the people associated with them, whether it's Channel 4, Channel 5, Channel 7, Channel 10, Channel 25, NPR, PBS, I don't care, the whole lot of them. You're useless. Okay? You're shills and propagandists. You're not journalists of any shape or form. A visiting Harvard law professor. Listen to this. I pointed this out on my X account. A visiting Harvard law professor last Wednesday, remember, that's Yom Kippur. That's the holiest day of the year for Jewish people. It's been reported, took a pellet gun and started to shoot up a synagogue in Brookline. And when he was arrested by police, because there were security guards there, and they said, "What are you doing? You're shooting at the synagogue." By the way, he shot at cars. He shattered windows with his pellet gun. Boom, 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 boom. And so when the police came and arrested him, by the way, his name is Carlos Gouveia, I believe is how you pronounce his last name. Anyway, it's that's Beth Zion, right? Yeah, 2 blocks from your house, Sandy. Beth Zion Temple was shot up with a pellet gun. And this guy, he's a Harvard law professor visiting. He's from Brazil, but still, he's a Harvard law professor. He was hunting rats. Hunting rats. That's the term that he used. Yeah. That's his story, that he's hunting rats. Now, hold on. You're hunting rats by shooting up a synagogue? Hold on. You're hunting rats by shooting the windows of cars and shattering the windows? No. A, he's lying, but B, look, in the 1930s, and that kind of virulent anti-Semitism at the time, and by the way, Hamas uses this, the Palestinians use this very same image. Jews were referred to as quote-unquote rats. That was, in fact, in Nazi propaganda, that was the image. Jewish people morphing into rats. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, this temple that in Brookline was about half a mile from this store, Jewish-owned store, that had a brick thrown through it. This is not a coincidence. Now, I'm telling you, when he said I'm hunting rats, and they know this, the police know this, the media knows this, many people who attend that temple know this, what he really meant was, quote unquote, I'm hunting Jews. And Brookline, as many of you know, is not just, it's quite wealthy, it's a well-to-do area, but it's also got a heavy Jewish population. So when he said, I'm hunting rats, in his own mind, he's like, well, I don't think I'm lying, because you should have said to him, you mean rats? Or you mean the Jews are rats? Now, it was clearly, as I said on X, this was an anti-Semitic act. By the way, he lived right next to the synagogue. He had an apartment right next to the synagogue. And he told the police, if you can believe this, it's a synagogue? No, I had no idea that's what I was shooting at. No, that's not, really? Yeah. It's got a dome. It's the biggest looking synagogue. Tell me, when you see people every Friday coming in with the yarmulkes on, what do you think they're going to? Or the big sign that says temple on it. I'm just saying, I had no idea. This is who Harvard Law is hiring? He's teaching at Harvard, or was. They put him on administrative leave. But the fact of the matter is, this is what Harvard has descended into? These are the kinds of vicious anti-Semites and Jew haters who take pellet guns and shoot up a temple and shoot cars? and say I'm hunting rats? This is the quality of the people now that Harvard is. I'm telling you, this may come as a shock. In the 70s and 80s, when the Kuhner man was still, a little bambino, as they say, growing up, Harvard had a great reputation. Harvard actually had some really top-notch, highly skilled, intelligent, qualified professors. There was some real talent that taught at Harvard. Now it's a freaking cesspool. Now you know where the students get indoctrinated in their hatred of the Jews. If this is the kind of people they're hiring, holy mackerel. Now, the bigger story is this. What if this was a black church? What if this was a Latino church? What if this was, I don't know, a transgender, some kind of a transgender club or social club or whatever? And some guy was shooting it up, claiming he was hunting rats and blowing out windows with his pellet gun. You think the media would say, oh, nothing to see here, let's sweep it under the rug? No, he was hunting little rats. Yeah, okay, let's move on. It would be wall to wall to wall to wall coverage. Instead, nothing. Literally, nothing. That's the problem. We're starting now in this city, like in cities all across the United States, we are starting to normalize anti-Semitism and Jew hatred. And I'm telling you, when this guy said, I'm hunting rats, wink, wink, it was a double entendre, a double meaning. He really meant, I'm hunting Jews. 617-266-6868. Peter in Florida. Thanks for holding, Peter, and welcome.
Hello. I would like to draw a contrast between Boston and Manchester, New Hampshire, because I have dozens of Jewish friends in Manchester, and you don't hear about any of this violence up there because all of them practice open carry.
Well, Peter, I think I would say you're half right. You're right. Manchester is much safer for Jews. A good part of it is you're right. They have open carry. It's a very different culture up there. So, you won't have an idiot going around with a pellet gun trying to shoot up a synagogue because he knows he may get a bullet in return. And you don't have Hamas thugs looking to beat up and kill Jewish residents with their keffiyehs because they know they may get a bullet in the head. But I would say, Peter, the other factor is this, and I know there are a couple universities in that area in southern New Hampshire, but nothing like what we have in the Boston area. Harvard, you don't know it better than I do, I'm sure, because you're from here. Harvard, Boston University, UMass, MIT, I could go on and on, Tufts, I could go on and on and on. So you have so many universities who are basically now Marxist indoctrination camps, where so many of the student activists are being brainwashed into the hatred of Israel, into the hatred of the Jews, hatred of America, hatred of the police. So you have a much larger pool of people to radicalize, indoctrinate, organize, mobilize for what we saw, the kind of despicable actions that we saw last night in downtown Boston. So I think it's both. I think it's the gun culture up there, the Second Amendment, and the fact that they just don't have the kind of universities that we have here. And really, Peter, I've got to say this. And look, university life and, big university, big ed, as it's called, is so dominant in Massachusetts that we're kind of almost used to it. But if you leave the universities alone, if you just take out the universities, Massachusetts is a purple state. Like, all of these campus activists, these campus radicals, they're the one. That's the base of Elizabeth Warren. That's the base of Ed Markey. That's the base of Michelle Wu. That's the base of Maura Healey. That's why they can't go against their own base. That's why they're so silent about what happened last night. But if you get out of the campuses in the greater Boston area, like I'll give you an example, like where I live, and I don't just literally mean my town, but all of my adjacent towns around me, it's all 50-50. I mean, literally, it's 50% Republican, 50% Democrat. What I'm saying is it's much more purple where I live. You go to the western part of the state, Massachusetts, I would say not even purple, a little bit red. Now, there aren't that many people there, but what I'm saying is, you go to some of these more rural areas or in the western part of the state. So take away the universities. And Massachusetts is not as deep blue as people think, but that's their shock troops. And that's also Chicago, Seattle, Portland, California. A lot of the recruitment of the radical Marxist communist left is from campuses and the areas around college campuses. Peter, I don't know if you agree or disagree, but anyway, please go ahead.
I have a lot of friends in Massachusetts who want to start carrying guns, but they can't because they're afraid of the government. And I think if Trump wants to make a big difference, he should start arresting people in the government who repeal the Second Amendment. And you get the 80-20 divide of the way people are, then the Antifas would be vastly outnumbered.
I agree. And just to further your point, and I think it's an excellent point, look, when we look at now what's happening in Chicago, let's just leave Boston out for a second, and what happened last night. Look at what's happening in Chicago. Look what's happening in Portland. Seattle, by the way, now is revving up. They're back to their no-go zones, and they're following Portland now. You look at L.A. L.A. is a hellhole. L.A. is basically Mexico. The cartels run L.A. Karen Bass is a former Black Panther. She is a hardcore Marxist communist who hates the police, hates our military, hates the United States, obviously hates Trump. Look, I mean, they've made that a complete sanctuary for illegal aliens, especially from Mexico. You look at what they're planning, the way they harass conservatives, persecute conservatives, go after police officers, the violence that they are tolerating and really encouraging. Those are the areas that cheered the assassination of Charlie Kirk. Those are the ones like, yeah, we want more of it. So what I'm saying is we can see what they want for our country. Really, the silver lining in all of this war that this insurrection that they've now declared against Trump and really America and the federal government, is you really see clear as day what the Democratic Party is. It is a communist party, and it is a party that wants one-party rule. Imagine if we didn't have the Second Amendment. You want to know why we need the Second Amendment? Brandon Johnson running the country? Pritzker running the country? AOC running the country? Mamdani running the country? I could go on and on. If these people ran our country, you don't think they would, seriously, how do you think they would treat us? How do you think they would go after, they wouldn't go after us? They think we're subhuman scum. They think we deserve to die. They can't even call on Jay Jones, the Democratic nominee for Attorney General, to step aside and drop out of the race. In fact, Virginia Senator Tim Kaine openly now said he supports him. Okay, so he called for the speaker to be shot in the head with 2 bullets. Okay, so he wished his children to die in the arms of the mother. By the way, did you hear now there's more? Apparently now he's going on, speaking of police violence, he now is, he repeatedly has said the only good cop is a dead cop. The only good cop is a dead cop. And this guy's going to be the freaking attorney general for Virginia? This is the Democratic Party. No one's condemning him. No one says he needs to drop out. In fact, they're lining up one after another endorsing the guy. So, to your point, Peter, that's exactly why we have the Second Amendment. Because that's the only thing that could potentially keep these Marxists in check. Imagine them in power with no Second Amendment. Ay, ay, ay. Ay, ay, ay. That's like last night. Imagine that Hamas mob, those terrorists rampaging, and there's no police. You're living there. What do you think would happen to you? Especially if you're Jewish. We need the Second Amendment now more than ever. Final word to you, Peter.
Can you imagine the Second Amendment actually being a legal document in Massachusetts? No.
Peter, as always, thank you very, very much for that call. 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, finally now there's some reaction coming in to what happened last night. You now have police unions condemning this growing violence against the police. They're saying now it's wave after wave of attacks, assaults. Police officers are now in danger. There is a target on their back. Yesterday, a mob of pro-Hamas, pro-Palestine agitators went wild on the streets on the second anniversary of October 7, and they pepper sprayed police, they beat police, they destroyed some cars, and they sent several officers with broken bones to the hospital. This comes on the heels of fire bombings of police cruisers over the weekend. There is now a war on the cops. 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, let me ask this great audience really two questions. Are you shocked or surprised by what happened last night? That here you had this, it was a mob. These roving, rampaging, and, pro-Hamas thugs and terrorists literally terrorize downtown Boston, block traffic for hours, attack police, send them to the hospital, pepper spray them, use smoke bombs, paralyze the city for hours and hours and hours. All the while, the mayor is incognito. The mayor is nowhere to be seen or heard from. The governor, nowhere to be seen or heard from. In fact, it's, what is it now? The morning after. And still nothing from Mayor Michelle Wu or Holden Healy, the governor. So are you surprised? And let me ask another very important question to the Jewish listeners out there in particular. Are you afraid? Are you afraid? Do you feel that we are now living in an increasing climate of anti-Semitism, virulent Jew hatred, especially now on the second anniversary, it was yesterday, of October 7, and how many on college campuses, how many on the left are openly celebrating what happened, the massacre, the violent, horrific massacre of 1,200 Israelis and over 250 taken hostage, and how Hamas has now become radical chic, almost like a celebrity cause for the Democratic Party and on so many college campuses. 617-266-6868. Arthur in Chestnut Hill. Thanks for holding, Arthur, and welcome.
Hi, Jeff.
Hi, Arthur.
Well, when I came to Boston from Europe in 1950, there was a huge Jewish population in the temple in Milton, by the way, Milton and Randolph are not as Jewish as you think anymore. The main temple in Milton on 138 was sold to the black community, and they turned it into a black church. And I've said for many years, I mean, the Jewish people are very smart. They're intelligent. Wherever they go, they're constructive. They build things. They contribute. But when it comes to picking their friends, they're stupid. In the area of politics, they're total idiots. And when Mandami gets elected, and there's no reason that he should with the huge Jewish population in Newton, you're going to have what they have in London now. That's what's going to happen in New York. I don't even know, what's wrong with this country that we allow people like Mandami to even be running. But the media is helping him get across because you don't hear anything about the other candidates. Even when you hear bad stories about Mandami, you still hear about him. You don't hear about the other candidates. And most people that vote don't even know who they're running. So when they see a name that's familiar, they say, oh, I've heard of him. I'm going to vote for him. That counts a lot. But plus, the fact that in blue states, elections are on the up and up. But the fact is, Jewish people are a soft target because they don't fight back. They've never learned from the Holocaust. They just meekly went to the train stations when they were attacked. They didn't fight back, and they've been the same ever since. 65% they did a poll don't even support Israel, and Israel is about to make one of the biggest mistakes ever. How can there be a peace plan with Hamas? There should be unconditional surrender. They shouldn't be rewarded. 2,000 Palestinian people are going to be let out of the jail for 20 hostages. No wonder they take hostages. And look at the way they've treated these hostages for the past 2 years. They took an infant hostage. Why? Where was the outcry for that? An infant which they strangled to death. And by the way, there were 46 Americans who were taken hostage, and I don't know what the number was that were killed on October 7th. But that alone should have turned around and had us sending troops to fighting up Palestinians. Instead, what do? We're the only country in the world, okay, that has allowed them into our country. Nobody wants them anymore because every place that's had them sees what the result is. Egypt put up walls to keep them out. All right, Jordan doesn't want them anymore. Lebanon doesn't want them anymore. Nobody wants them. And every place they are, this is what you get: terrorism. And by the way, a lot of those people in that riot last night were Antifa. You could tell the Antifa look. And they also threw a Molotov a police car showed up, Molotov cocktail. And these people are who are the people of Boston support. It's all the media's fault too, because the media does not tell the truth. They report Al Jazeera facts, and Al Jazeera took part in October 7th. You know, as someone who's appreciated what the Jewish people have.
No, you're right. Really, I mean, honestly, Arthur, on every point, you're completely right. 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, this is not an easy poll question. This is really not an easy poll question. The Kuhner Country poll question of the day, sponsored by Mario's. Mario's Quality Roofing, Siding, and Windows. Who does the radical left hate more? Which group? Who does the radical left hate more? A, Jews. B, Republicans. This is not an easy one. I got to tell you. You know, I could do Jews, but then I go, they'd like to assassinate and kill Republicans. And then, but they, They love Hamas and the mass murder of Jews. And you go back and forth, you go back and forth, you go back and forth. Well, they hate them both a lot. There's no question about that. I'd have to go with B. If I was voting, I'd probably go with B, Republicans. But man, this could go either way, really. So I want to ask you, the great audience of Kuhner Country, which group, who do you think the radical left hates more? A, Jews, B, Republicans. You can vote on our webpage, wrko.com/Kuhner, wrko.com/Kuhner, Kuhner. If you prefer, you can vote via X. And again, last night I was all over that mob and this another massive incident, disgraceful violence on downtown Boston against the police, sending many of them to the hospital. A pro-Hamas mob was rampaging. And again, if you want to answer this poll question, you can go to my handle on X at the Kuhner Report, Kuhn as in National ER, at the Kuhner Report, all one word. All right, just very quickly, I want to ask all of you, this explosion in anti-Semitism, and there's no question now, anti-Semitism is on the rise. It's getting bigger. It's getting more dangerous. It's getting more virulent. It's getting more hateful. It's becoming much more, quote unquote, mainstream or normalized, especially within the Democratic Party and within academia, on college campuses, in popular culture, and of course in the media. And I just want to ask read a couple of texts and then ask the audience, I think, a very important question. This is from 508. Jeff, the reason so many of these blue city mayors and blue state governors are resisting assistance from the National Guard is because they feel it would be an admission of their failure to protect their city and their state. And rather than being an adult and thanking the president for the assistance, they turn it into a political grudge match. And I think 508 is completely right. It would be a massive admission of failure. And that's part of the reason why they don't want to accept the assistance. In other words, their pride, even though it leads to more people being killed and their cities to continue to unravel. Anyway, and then 508 continues, these protesters are emboldened because no one is held accountable. If they get arrested, they're back on the streets in minutes. Any bail is ridiculously low, so the protesters have no fear because the administration, the Democrat administration, supports them. Well, that's what you saw last night in downtown, on Tremont Street and at the Boston Common. Those pro-Hamas, rampaging protesters, terrorists, really. They had no fear of the police. They have no fear of the consequences because they know Michelle Wu is going to back them and Healy's going to back them. So there's going to be no consequences. They may get a small slap on the wrist, but that's about it. They're not going to go to jail. They're not going to pay a serious price. They're going to be put behind bars. And, they can smash a police officer's face in, literally, like last night. Break their jaw, break their nose, break their arms, break their legs, break their bones, beat them to a pulp, pepper spray them, burn their cars, firebomb them. Nothing's going to happen. And low bail or no bail and released on the streets, they're back, and then the charges will be dropped. Or it'll be, whatever. It'll be plea bargained down to a misdemeanor. And so they're like, we'll just keep doing this because nothing happens. And I think that's part of the problem. It's a big part of the problem. Now, just one more thing. By the way, two more texts. This is from 781. Jeff, notice, it's always the left that's involved in this sort of activity. That's very true. The riots, violent demonstrations, police hatred. Yet they turn around and point a finger at us, saying we're the violent ones, when there is no evidence whatsoever. It is always the left who does this, always. Well, that's projection. They always accuse us of what they're guilty of. And notice, it's always the right, the far right, MAGA, they're the threat to democracy, violence, these are the insurrectionists. You don't see us going around beating up police officers. You don't see us rioting, burning, looting, blocking ICE, obstructing federal law enforcement, setting police cars on fire, surrounding ICE buildings, literally, burning entire cities to the ground. And I really, really want, this is the heart of this is one of the texts that I want to, this is the heart of the discussion I want to get into. Jeff, this is, by the way, from 917. Jeff, I believe everything that you saw last night starts with parenting. But a parent's worst enemy is the government-run schools and the colleges. And then the popular culture reinforces the left's position, and the leftist media amplifies it. Young, indoctrinated leftists are Obama's army. And these kids who were born around 2001 have no recollection of the emotional impact 9/11 had on us. Now, at 24, 25, 26 years old, they are only given a political review of that day. Now, that is a very good point. Number one, I do think a lot of it comes down to parenting. And even if you're a good parent and you try to instill good values in your children, I don't know, don't attack police officers. Don't go around calling for the mass murder of Jewish people. Don't go around defending terrorists who like to behead women and children and kill innocent Jews a la Hamas. Look at what you're faced with. The indoctrination your children will face in the public schools, elementary, middle, high school, the colleges. Then you've got popular culture. Then you've got the lying fake news media. So you may say, Jeff, we did everything we could. And yet my child still comes home, talking and sounding like Ilhan Omar or Rashida Tlaib or AOC or Bernie Sanders or Zoran Mamdani. That, in other words, the culture is arrayed against us. The institutions, the education establishment, the media is arrayed against us. And our children are being brainwashed whether we like it or not. And then you've got this, and this to me is clearly what you're seeing in New York and what you're seeing last night. How far we have fallen from 9/11. I lived through it. Most of you who listen to this show lived through it. I will never forget that day for the rest of my life. That 19 Islamic terrorists took down the World Trade Center, the towers, smashed a plane into the Pentagon, and the other one in that field in Pennsylvania that was going to either obliterate Congress or obliterate the White House. Radical Islam had come home to the United States to attack us. Okay, let me just put a very quick exclamation point on my what I said in the last segment. It's been now, 24, almost 25 years, obviously, since the heinous Islamic terrorist attacks on September 11, 2001. 3,000 Americans were slaughtered. It was the worst terrorist attack on American soil in our history. And we all vowed, I remember this like it was yesterday, that we would never forget. That's I bumper stickers, that's all you kept hearing. We will never forget. We will never forget. We will never forget. Well, fast forward about, 25 years later, 24 to be exact, and we've forgotten. Zohran Mamdani, in the very place where the heart of the attack took place, New York City, he's got a massive double-digit lead. He will now become the next mayor of New York. A man who calls for Sharia law in New York. An open, naked Jew hater who yesterday commemorated the second anniversary of October 7 by accusing Israel of committing a genocidal war and of essentially siding with Hamas. He's in bed with Palestinian terrorists. And this is the guy you're going to make as the mayor of New York? Are you freaking kidding me? And then you've got here, literally wearing keffiyehs, the shawls, the Palestinian shawls that Hamas wears when they go out and butcher people, and they're walking around, and I don't mean one or two. There were dozens and dozens and dozens of them. And they turned downtown Boston into a freaking riot zone, a war zone. Red smoke everywhere. Police officers injured. Police cruisers smashed. Officers pepper sprayed, beaten, clubbed. People yelling, screaming. Traffic blocked for hours. Pedestrians absolutely petrified. People in their cars saying, what the hell is going on? We can't go anywhere. Ambulances blocked. Emergency personnel can't get people to the freaking hospital. And the media sides with them? And the mayor sides with them? And the governor sides with them? And they're considered heroes on college campuses? And Islamic terrorists are literally glamorized and celebrated and cheered? And literally going on about our martyrs, we stand with our martyrs, i.e. those that committed the heinous atrocities against Israel 2 years ago. So what, you like raping women? You love killing babies? You love slaughtering innocent men? This is now this is what many college students get off on? How did we go from never forget and what happened? And by the way, those planes that smashed into the Twin Towers, they came from Logan Airport. We forget that there was a Boston connection on 9/11. And I'm not even going to mention the Boston Islamic terrorist bombing. Okay, the marathon bombing. I'm not even going to mention that. So what's happened? There has been a seismic shift in our culture where we went from never again, we will never forget, because remember what the enemy told us. They said, we will destroy America from within. They told us. This is just the beginning. They go, we will destroy you from within. And now they're literally trying to destroy us from within. I blame the schools. I blame the colleges, academia. Honestly, I blame a lot of the parents who raised these kids. I blame the Democratic Party. I blame Hollywood. I blame popular culture. And I blame the media. There's more blame to go around. But what we're now seeing is a culture that glorifies radical Islam and Muslim terrorism. I'm sorry, I'm just calling it the way I see it. A deep, profound hatred for this country and a deep hatred for the Jews. They're swimming in a culture now of anti-Semitism that I'm telling you we have never seen anything the likes of since the 1930s. And what you saw last night was a symptom of this, a manifestation of this. 617-266-6868. Agree, disagree. Mike in Saugus. Thanks for holding, Mike, and welcome.
Jeff, thank you for taking my call.
My pleasure, Mike.
Did you expect any different in Massachusetts than Portland, Chicago, any of those areas? We have the worst politicians here in Massachusetts. Every single one of them are just as bad as that Mondani or the governor or the mayor of Chicago, Portland. There's not any difference. The police better really start getting their union to start fighting and stop caving into these politicians.
Well, Mike, the problem is that these unions endorsed Michelle Wu and they endorsed Maura Healey. And they've made a deal with the devil. That's their problem now. And honestly, I would love to have rank and file police officers call the show. Please, we'll use a different name. I promise we won't get your real identity out. But I'd like to know how many people now feel about the fact that their union leadership and their leadership at the top sold them all down the river. They endorsed cop haters. Michelle Wu is a Black Lives Matter pro-Antifa cop hater. So is Maura Healey. And now, I mean, their cruisers are getting blown up. They're getting firebombed. I can read to you again. This is coming out from their own fraternal union. Larry Calderon said, police are not, his words, not mine. There's a war on police in Boston and in Massachusetts. The police are now admitting it. They go, we're getting attacked. We're getting assaulted. We're getting beaten. Our cars are getting firebombed. And he goes there because there's no consequences. Well, who's the one that's supposed to impose the consequences? This comes from the mayor's office. This comes from the governor's office. And by the way, I'm sorry that, the Boston police leadership endorsed. So I don't know what else to tell them. What comes around goes around. I love the police. All of you know that. The rank and file, the men and women in blue, I love you in a non-sexual way. But your leadership has screwed you. And now, I don't know. Honestly, I don't know what to do now. Because you see, I know they want to take the gloves off because they should take the gloves off. Because what happened last night was a disgrace on every level. There was no need for officers to have their bones shattered. Literally, their bones were broken and being sent to the hospital. But they've tied their hands with these rules of engagement. And these thugs, these whatever it's Antifa or Hamas or I don't care, Black Lives Matter, these anti-police far left thugs know that. And so they have the initiative. And they were the ones, look, they started with the pepper spray, the clubbing, the beating, the attacks, that was all them. The smoke bombs, that was all them. The police were defensive and they were reacting to what was happening to them. So the leadership now is not going to allow them to be able to properly defend themselves. Now, I'm telling you, you keep firebombing police cruisers, a cop is going to get burned alive. You keep allowing Antifa and these Hamas thugs to rampage, and it's not just going to be the next time your nose is broken or your jaw is smashed or your leg is shattered. You're going to be dead. They're going to put a hammer right through your skull. I mean, they were trying to kill him last night with baseball bats, hammers, clubs, you name it. So, or you're going to get permanently maimed. Now, if I'm a police officer, so you want me to put my life on the line to protect the public, and you won't give me the means to defend myself? And you're going to side with the people who've made it now their mission, their political mission and purpose to murder and kill us? Let me just say this, because I got Dr. Grace on the line. Don't take my word for it. Those pro-Hamas thugs sent out a flyer on social media. They posted a flyer saying, join us, Days of Rage, commemorating October 7th. They were celebrating it. Like, this is a great thing. Yeah, Hamas killed 1,200 Jews. Yeah, let's party. And in the background, so they're showing faces of men with keffiyehs. They go, let's go out and pray for Palestine. And in the background, they had a Boston police cruiser on fire. On fire. So that's the flyer. So what they're telling everybody is, join us and let's go blow up some cops. This is not a peaceful... From the beginning, I'm like, well, by the way, and people were warning on social media. They were saying, well, no, this is going to get ugly fast. I mean, it's not just that they're siding with Hamas, with the keffiyehs and everything. No, they're saying, let's start firebombing police cars. In other words, let's go kill a couple cops. We're going to go cop hunting. The mayor should have been all over this. The governor should have been all over this. And they should have said, don't do it right away. Don't do it. You know what now? We're doubling, tripling, quadrupling the number of officers we're going to put on the streets. You lay a finger. As Trump said, you just spit in the face of an officer. Bang. As Trump said, I'm quoting him verbatim. Bang. You're going to get clubbed right in the skull. And we're going to arrest you on the spot. And everybody, this time, you're going to go to jail for a long time. Don't do it. And you better not firebomb a police car. That's an act, not just of vandalism. That's an act of terrorism. Instead, nothing. The police were undermanned. The police were outnumbered. They had rules of engagement. They were surrounded. And the mob moved in. And we are very, very lucky we don't have dead cops today. I'm telling you, we dodged a bullet last night. Now, they say, these pro-Hamas activists on college campuses, the very same groups are saying they're back tonight and tomorrow and after all week, a week of rage. Their words, a week of rage in solidarity with Hamas. If it walks like a terrorist, talks like a terrorist, acts like a terrorist, it's a terrorist. 617-266-6868. Okay, little late, but I'm getting to her now. Dr. Grace putting liberals in their place. Grace Voto. And I just got to say this, my better half, full disclosure. Yes, I definitely married up. Grace, as you can tell, Kuhner man is on fire this morning. My city was under siege. Police officers whom I love were beaten, pepper sprayed. Some of them were literally sent to the hospital with broken bones. Traffic was blocked for hours. People couldn't get to see loved ones in the hospital. Ambulances said they had to divert themselves and people could have gotten killed. We now have pro-Hamas, anti-Semitic, Jew-hating brown shirts rampaging in downtown Boston, and the freaking mayor and the freaking governor and the media are silent. Your reaction?
This is a Democratic strategy. You know, you've asked the question again and again, who is to blame? It is the Democratic Party. It is the Democratic leaders. This is a strategy, ultimately, to try to turn the public against President Trump. What they're trying to do is they're sending agitators in various places, whether it's Portland, Chicago, Boston. Just get on the news, torch things, cause violence, and then let's present an image that this is Trump's America. And ultimately, it's all Trump's fault because he's the divisive figure. So this is a political strategy that is orchestrated right here from the Democratic Party. They are now the party of violence because guess what? They've got nothing else. There is no other issue that there is no issue that they can campaign on that the public trusts them. So the only thing they have is to try to destroy Trump's presidency. They used lawfare before, and it didn't work. And this is the last gambit that they have to try to create the illusion that the public is against his deportation policy, that the public is against his policy in Israel, when that's really not the case. So, you ask the question, who's to blame? It is the Democratic Party, and then the media just does the bidding of the party. That's all.
Grace, you're an historian like I am. You love the 19th century more than I do. I'm more of a 20th century historian. That's fine. Different, different folks can like different stuff for different folks. But you know something about the 1930s because of my passion for that period. As you know, my library is full of books on the 1930s and the 1940s. When you hear young men, some young women too, 13 were arrested, 8 men, 5 women, 20, 21, 22, 23 years old, chanting, "Death to the Jews, death to the Jews. From the river to the sea, Palestine shall be free. The only good Jew is a dead Jew." When you hear this, not in Hitler's Germany, not in Munich or Berlin or Frankfurt, but in 2025, Boston in 2025, many of them coming from Harvard and MIT, supposedly some of the most elite universities in the world. What is happening to our culture? What is happening to our children? Did you ever think you would live to see the day?
Well, Jeff, 2 things here I want to just say. What we saw here in Boston, these were attempts to lure police officers and harm police officers in particular. So this had very little to do with actually trying to, launch a legitimate protest. They wanted to harm our police officers, and as you heard, police leaders are saying we were outnumbered and we are understaffed. And again, this is a Democratic problem. I lay that at their feet. It is they who have vilified police officers now for over a decade. And so you have young people who think that all authority is inherently racist and evil. And what you're seeing amongst the youth is a complete disregard and disrespect for our public authority figures like police officers. So that, again, is the Democrats' fault, and it's part of their strategy to, as I said, create chaos. Now, when you talk about this anti-Semitism, yes, it's gotten worse because the anti-Semitism is now fed in the universities. We saw it rising when I was a student in the 90s. I saw it rising even in the universities in Canada with more and more programs which took the side of the Palestinians, etc. And we saw the hatred of the Jews being legitimately taught, given an ideological framework, a quote unquote, a legitimate, quote unquote. They tried to make it legitimate. They tried to make hatred of the Jews sound legitimate. And that's what you're seeing in the universities. And it's not like they're emerging these great Arab scholars. Okay, let's give you the reasons why Palestine deserves its state. We're not seeing that. We're just seeing the spreading of hate cloaked with a veneer of an ideology that is coming out of the universities.
Grace, we literally have 1 minute. Why? I understand that a lot of it is academia that's driving this, but why the Jews? In other words, if they were shouting death to all blacks, or what do we want? Dead blacks. When do we want it? Now. Or dead Latinos, or dead Asians, or whatever, dead gays, or take your pick. They would be absolute universal condemnation. But when they say, what do we want? Dead Jews. When do we want it? Now. Nothing. Nothing. Why?
Listen, there's bits and spurts of condemnation from the Democrats, but over and over again, they're coddling violence. Look what happened. They killed Charlie Kirk, right? There was, we're going to change the culture. We're going to lower the rhetoric. I said, no, it's going to get worse before it gets any better. They're not serious about it. They're attacking ICE. They're spreading hatred against ICE, and they're being coddled by the Democrats. So it's not just that the young are being encouraged to hate the Jews. They're being encouraged to hate various groups on the right or various individuals on the right to create chaos at home. And I think that's the larger point. This is a deliberate Democratic
strategy. Grace, you hit the nail right on the head. Dr. Grace putting liberals in their place. Grace Vuoto. Grace, as always, dynamite stuff. 617-266-6868. Let's go to Slas in Beverly. Thanks for holding, Slas, and welcome.
Hi, Jeff. My name is Slace, but, I can
Slace.
understand. No one gets it right the first time.
I'm sorry. I have Slas on the board. My bad. Slays. Please, go ahead, Slays.
Okay. Hey, Jeff, I'm about 65 years old. Right now I have more rage than any of those young punks. I am incensed by what's going on in my town. I've lived in Boston my whole life, and I'm an inactive Marine. I served in the Cold War. And I took an oath for all enemies, foreign and domestic. And I never, ever thought that this American's going to eat its way from the inside out. Charlie Kirk always told those college kids that college is a scam. So maybe he could get a few of them out of that radicalization skunk ponds that they're in. I live near a college. And I don't see too much of it because I don't spend too much time up there. But this has gotten way out of control, way out of control. And the Democrats and Michelle Wu and Governor got to grow a set, or the Republicans got to elect somebody to grow a set. Because this is just crazy now. And I've been waiting to call you a long time. I was a Democrat my whole life. And just as the Godfather, keep your enemies close, I started listening to your show. And the more I listened, the more I realized that I am not a Democrat. That's not the way I think. I am now a staunch Republican, and I thank you for it, Jeff. And that's about all I wanted to say.
Oh, Slaz, God bless you. And no, look, Slaz, really, I'm not trying to be cute with you or, I'm not trying to play games with you. I'm really speaking from the heart. You are a Democrat, but you're the true Democrat. You're what the Democrats used to be. And the Democrats then were a very different party than today. The party of John F. Kennedy, the party of Harry Truman, the party of Franklin Roosevelt, these New Deal, Fair Deal Democrats who loved America, were very patriotic, were anti-fascist, anti-communist, wanted, blue-collar Democrats who wanted to give the working man some help and help him rise and achieve the American dream. To me, that was the best of the Democratic Party, the most noblest of the Democratic Party. And, and that's Robert F. Kennedy Jr., that's Tulsi Gabbard, that's so many now. And, they were called Reagan Democrats in the 80s. And now many of them are Trump Democrats or just straight Trump supporters or MAGA. But no, Slaz, you should never be ashamed of that. You never left the party, as Reagan famously said. The party left you. They left you. And they've become now something that is truly grotesque, disgusting. They're a communist party, a far left extremist party, frankly, an anti-Semitic Jew-hating party. John F. Kennedy is rolling in his grave. Hell, Robert F. Kennedy is rolling in his grave. Truman is rolling in his grave. The Democrats of old they can't recognize this party. Remember, some of the best Cold Warriors, some of the best, most effective anti-communists and anti-fascists, obviously, because they oversaw the war against Hitler, but were Democrats. So to see the very thing that they tried to defeat, I don't want to, Slaz, just think about it. Who was the president that oversaw the creation of NATO, which was to stop the Soviets? It was Harry Truman, a Democrat. Who gave maybe the most inspiring anti-communist speech ever? It was John F. Kennedy. Remember when he said, "We shall pay any price, bear any burden, oppose any foe, help any friend to oppose totalitarianism, communism, anywhere around the world." I mean, it electrified people, not just in the United States, but around the world, in the banner in defense of freedom. So what I'm saying is the party now has become the very, very thing that the Democrats used to despise. And not just, I'm talking about communism, run by donors, run by corporations, run by greedy banks and millionaires and billionaires. The Democrats were populists before. They were for the little person, the little guy. Now they've become everything that they used to be against. So, Slaz, no need to apologize. You didn't change. They changed. Slaz, thank you very much for that call. Really good call. Michael in Brookline. Thanks for holding, Michael, and welcome. Michael, you're on the air. Go ahead.
Okay. Whatever happened to the Proud Boys? You remember? I'm from New York originally, but Boston used to be a pretty tough town. Some of the neighborhoods. Where are these kids? Italians and Irish usually are pretty patriotic. Go Bees, USA, where are they?
Well, the Proud Boys are in jail, Michael. Biden took care of the Proud Boys. And so he put them in jail, literally for stuff they didn't do. So you see, this is how it works. Antifa, no jail. Black Lives Matter, no jail. I'm telling you, these Hamas thugs, they arrested them. They're going to release them. There's not going to be no jail for these Hamas thugs. On all these anti-Semites, these pro-Palestinian terrorists on college campuses, no one's gone to jail. They were beating Jewish students up, attacking. They literally took over buildings. They freaking hijacked buildings. They held janitors hostage, like in the Middle East. I'm telling you, the only thing they didn't do was come out with the kafia and, with the knife on the throat. They do in the Middle East. They go, Allah, 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 and then cut the throat off. Cut the head off. Just cut the throat. That's the only thing they didn't do. But they grabbed these janitors and they said, no, we're holding them hostage. This was Colombia, I believe. It was either Colombia or was it here in Boston? Anyway, it was one of these Ivy League. So, Michael, nothing happens to these people. If you can't beat them, join them. Maybe I'm thinking we make a deal. Instead of you guys rampaging every night, burning cop cars, sending police officers to the hospital, talking intifada, jihad, jihad, jihad. How about we build a big mother mosque right there on the Boston Common? And you could have like in the morning call to prayer, like they have in Detroit now and in Dearborn, which is waking up all the residents, or in Minneapolis, St. Paul. Nobody can get a good night's sleep anymore. And hala, 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 hala. And, and then you do it at night before you go to bed, and then you wake up at 3, 4 in the morning. Why don't we just do that and call it even? Okay? So don't walk around with the kafias and the clubs and the pepper spray and go and put, rampage and destroy the city and firebomb police cars and send the poor guys and the poor women into the hospital. We'll give you a big mosque. We'll let the Saudis fund it. And you can have the big loudspeakers 6 times a day, every day, nonstop, all morning, all night. And let's call it even. 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay. I want to read this. I won't mention the person's name. I know this person very well. I respect this person very much. Former law enforcement, had to leave because the person was badly wounded on the job, but knows a lot of police officers. Here is what he texted me on my personal phone. Good morning, Jeff. Well, good morning to you, my friend. Now, please listen to this. You are absolutely correct when you say that Governor Maura Healey and Mayor Michelle Wu side with domestic terrorists and go against the police. Yet these two traitors will demand police protection when they feel threatened. In addition, if one of the officers were hurt, last night, were hurt so bad that they could no longer do their job, these very same two traitors, the governor and the mayor, will make their lives miserable with a broken system that is in place when an officer needs to retire with dignity after protecting their communities. And this poor guy went through the ringer. Okay? Went through the ringer. Was very badly injured on the job. Literally, I don't want to give too much details because I don't want to give his person's identity away, but chasing after some very bad criminals. And to get this guy a pension was like World War III. Okay? But let that go. Let me just say this. Michelle Wu should never come on this show because she's a coward, but she went on one of these lib shows, okay, here in the Boston area. And she was asked, do you feel safe? Like, in other words, like somehow this poor woman lives under threat. And she said, oh no, I don't feel threatened at all. I feel very safe. Why? Because I have multiple police cruisers and multiple police officers, her words, protecting me and my family, even at our home, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And so I responded to her on X. And just, let me paraphrase what I said. You phony, you fraud, you typical liberal hypocrite. You get police protection and security 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So yeah, of course, for you, Boston is the safest city in America. Sure, if I had cop cars parked outside my house, if I had police officers watching me and my wife and my kids 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, I would feel extremely safe too. Who wouldn't? But what about police and security protection for the rest of us? Where's our police? Where's our police protection? You phony, you fraud, you. Or last night, where was the protection for the police? Because it came late. It came too late. And 4 of them were injured, and a couple of them literally hospitalized, sent to the hospital. 617-268 with broken bones. 617-266-6868. Frank in Arlington. Thanks for holding, Frank, and welcome.
Thank you for taking my call.
My pleasure,
I agree
Frank.
100%. We need the National Guard up this way. I have an app on my phone. I'm on the road. It's from Newsmax. It tells you all sorts of emergency news. I listened to it a couple of days ago. As of right now, according to Newsmax, the feds have undercovered an underground system of the Islamic groups that were going to make armies in certain states. They're getting financed and everything and weaponry to take out certain states. Now, this one here would be a prize because we have a lot of infrastructure of Raytheon. So I would assume that Trump, I hope, knows this and reacts immediately. Also, Megan's getting confused. I talk about this station. I talk about everything. And they say, how do you know this? I said, go on your station. I'm promoting it all the time. But they're brain dead. They're getting confused because they heard that Trump was supposed to try to take them to court, Maura Healey and Mayor Wu. And they're getting very upset that that's not done, and he's losing their confidence. What's your opinion on that, Jeff, please?
Well, I think he does need to take him to court. I agree, Frank. Look, the only thing I would just say about Trump, and I think you know this better than I do because you're watching this stuff 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. He's fighting so many battles on so many fronts. The man's got so much on his plate. He's only one man. There's only so much time in a day. I'm not excusing it. I'm just saying, look, he just put together a 20-point peace plan. Listen to this. Just stand back objectively, okay? Whatever. Look, some parts of the plan I like, some parts of the plan I don't like. You want my honest opinion, but it doesn't matter. Israel has agreed to it. The Palestinian Authority has agreed to it, okay? In the West Bank, they've agreed to it. Every Arab country, Egypt, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, Syria, I could go on. I don't want Qatar, all of them have agreed to it. The Muslims have agreed to it. The Europeans have agreed to it. The Russians have agreed to it. Turkey's agreed to it. China's agreed to it. The only one that won't agree to it? Hamas. And so now he's got to try to somehow put this thing over the finish line. So he's trying to bring peace to the Middle East. He's trying to bring peace to Ukraine. He's negotiating with Carney now over a good trade deal with Canada. What I'm saying is he's got a government shutdown to deal with. He's got Chicago to deal with. He's got Portland to deal with. Things are going to start to fall through the cracks. That's why personnel is policy. I always say this, Frank. Who's the Attorney General? Who's the FBI Director? Who's the Deputy Attorney General? Who's the Deputy FBI Director? Because one man can't do everything. And I think instead of blaming Trump, look at some of the people around him. They're supposed to pick up the slack. And the National Guard should be called into Boston, and Michelle Wu and Governor Healy should be sued, and they should be indicted for obstruction of justice and for running a sanctuary state and a sanctuary city. To me, there's no question. Michelle Wu is an insurrectionist mayor, and Healy is an insurrectionist governor. They're no different than Brandon Johnson in Chicago and Mr. Golden Corral, Pritzker in Illinois. So you there's only so much. What I'm saying is don't get mad at Trump. It's the people around him. They've got to get off their rear end and start holding Democrats accountable. I mean, enough is enough. Victor in Maryland. Thanks for holding, Victor, and welcome.
Good morning, Kuhner America. I hope you have affiliates so the whole country can hear you.
Oh, we're working on it. We're working on it. Thank you so much, Victor. Victor, my friend, what do you make of all this?
I want to bring you to memory. I want to do a memory lane for a couple of minutes. It's 1992. The Rodney King riots are going full blast, except in Philadelphia. They had a mayor there, Rizzo, and he said if there was any rioting going on, he had, and I'm not kidding about this, he had a shoot-to-kill order. So Philadelphia was the only city that did not have riots.
Well, Victor, you're completely right. And B, I'm still, young enough or old enough, however you want to put it, to remember this was like in the 80s and even, as you said, in the early 90s, where you had mayors in cities with, the full backing of the police chief and the police who would do riot control with live ammunition. I don't mean rubber bullets. I mean, like you put it, lock and load. And they were told, look, you start burning down property, you start attacking police or attacking civilians or burning cop cars or, whatever. You start, you're burning, rioting, looting, you're going to get shot. Like, that's what's going to happen. So don't do it and you won't get shot. And it worked. I'm sorry to say, it worked. Now, once in a while, someone was shot, some crazy person. Sometimes they were killed. Most of the times they weren't. They were just wounded and had to be taken to the hospital. But believe me, you fire a couple of live rounds at rioters and all of a sudden there's no riot. And then they went from live ammunition to rubber bullets, which sting. They hurt like the devil, but that's it. And then they stopped even using rubber bullets. Now they don't even use tear gas. Now they just come in and literally, like last night, they put zip ties on you, to handcuff you. They use zip ties. That's it. Well, that's how police officers now are getting their faces smashed in and their arms broken. So, because their ability to control the crowd has now been completely restrained. And so, Victor, I got to ask you, is part of the problem that we have put police now in a straitjacket, that we've so tied their hands that basically now rioters have the initiative, rioters can do almost anything they want, and the police are essentially neutered in the face of these crazies, fanatics, and in many ways political terrorists? Is the problem we need to embolden and empower the police, and we're not doing that?
No, we're not. And the police are not, they're resigning in protest because their hands are tied. The least little thing they do, the civilians want to get them fired or demoted or whatever, and the police are just not allowed to do their job. And if they could do their job without any hassles from the civilian population, I think Boston and other cities would be a lot safer.
Oh, I agree. Amen. To me, I think that's a big reason for why we're seeing so much more rioting and these mobs and these violent protests erupt in city after city. They've tied the hands of the police. Victor, thank you very much for that call. All right, let me squeeze one more in. Let's go to Rafiq. You're worth the wait, Rafiq. Rafiq, I hate to do this to you. You got 1 minute. Go, my friend.
I'm going to make it very quick. I just want to make a comment about your audience. You always say the best. Russ, who offers a great historical perspective. Brenda, whose faith and Christianity is obvious to everyone. I love her.
And Mike, why couldn't you let him continue? I don't understand this, Mike. Mike, you couldn't give this guy another 20, 25 seconds? Mike, I got to tell you, maybe we should put you along with the police. Because I'm telling you, I think you could do crowd control, Mike.